Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sonic Chronicle. My name is Owen, and today we are looking at another visual history guide of electric guitars. Today we are going to be looking at Epiphone guitars as requested by Christian Hartwig 4393 on the Fender guitars video that I did not too long ago, just like maybe a week or so ago. Everybody's heard of Epiphone, everybody knows what Epiphone is these days. They're Gibson's entry-level brand. They're your cheap version of Les Paul, your cheap SG. In fact, I have an Epiphone SG Special, which is within eyeshot over here. But that wasn't always the case. So let's jump in, we'll take a look at Epiphone guitars. Before that though, please do consider hitting the like button if you like what I do generally. Please do consider hitting the subscribe button if you want to subscribe to the channel and see more of this stuff dropped directly into your subscription feed. And of course, leave me comments in the comment section below if you want to see any specific guitar types or guitar brands that might be covered in this book, covered in its own visual history video. For now though, let's crack on and open this bad boy up to Epiphone. Alright, so here we go. We have Epiphone guitars here. And in fact, what I was saying a moment ago about Epiphone being like the cheap Gibson is even mentioned here in this book here. Many young readers may only know Epiphone as a band primarily of bargain price entry-level versions of Gibson and Fender style models. I don't know about that second part. But back when archtops ruled the earth in the years before and after World War II, Epiphone was one of the most respected guitar companies, making mid-range to high-end instruments often used in big band jazz orchestras. It also notes here that the Epiphone company dates back to the 1870s in Turkey, where Greek-born founder Anastasios Stathopoulos crafted his own label fiddles, lutes, and Greek liotos. So he made ouds, effectively, that were very, very popular. But he moved to America in the early 1900s, moving to, as it says here, Long Island City, Queens, New York. And there he started producing banjos, I believe. But when he died in 1915, his son took over, and his son's name was Epaminondas. Epaminondas? Apologies for butchering that name, but his nickname was Epi. So he took Epi, meaning him, and phone being the Greek, I believe, for voice, to form the Epiphone, a guitar company or banjo company, I suppose, initially. And then they moved on to making guitars in 1928. So they had this one over here, which is, I believe, a Zephyr. Around 1941 this one was made, so it would have been quite a bit after Epi had taken over his father's business. And then over here on the right hand side, this is the Epiphone Regent, with 3 pickups over here, a couple of nice knobs on here, and a number of strange looking switches down here. Oh, this was topped with an up to the minute bank of 6 tone modifying switches. So I presume that that's a volume and tone knob there, and then these are effectively ways of splitting the coils maybe between the pickups, something like that. I don't know, someone who knows more about these kinds of things can let me know. And this one, obviously, this has the with the 2 knobs here with their different settings. It looks like they had fixed I suppose tone and volume settings here rather than this was very loose flowing knobs that we know to this day. It has this I suppose a pickup selector, but it only has 1 pickup, so I don't really know what that is for. And then we have this floating pickguard as well on both of these models. In fact, all of the models across both of these pages have those floating pickguards, as Gibson do, and I suppose did in 1957, I believe we saw in the last video. Epiphone was doing that before Gibson were. So these were released in the early 1930s, or would have been, I suppose, initially conceived of in the early 1930s. And by the end of that decade, Gibson, has been considered at this stage to be the leading manufacturer of archtops, as it says here. And Epiphone was, gaining a lot of ground. They were a major competitor to Gibson at that point in time. Over here we have a couple of Gibson era Epiphones, unfortunately. These were effectively, Gibson, applying their own kind of technology, I suppose, to these guitars. In fact, you can even see it in the Bigsby Trem here. We had seen in our previous video that by 1958, Gibson were doing that to a lot of their guitars, including the Les Pauls, including the SGs that came out later and including their arch tops. So this is the Electric Emperor. This is a 1959 model. So this is their conventional control layout. And then over here on the right, this is a 1964 version of it. And this had mini humbuckers as standard. And again, we've got those Gibson style knobs. What's quite interesting here as well is that these bridges, this is like your standard bridge, I suppose, that you would have seen from arch tops at the time. The string through here at the bottom, the bridge for intonation here, or the for whatever level of intonation you could get. Then over here we have this interesting version of it where the strings are definitely shorter on the higher range, and then the bass strings here are way further back. So it's kind of, I suppose, a dual scale guitar, and same with this 1964 model over here, which is really, really weird. Funnily enough, though, when Epiphone had started producing their guitars, they were in Queens, New York, but I believe they moved their factory in 1951. They moved their factory to Philadelphia, as is noted over here. This is something that I'd seen prior to this being called out here, but when they did make that move, a number of employees wouldn't go. And what they did was they stayed where they were. They stayed in New York, and they founded Guild Guitars. If it weren't for Epiphone, we would have no Guild. Guild are another one of those guitar brands that I'd love to take another look at as part of this series. And maybe I will. Maybe I will do that later on. They had moved to Philadelphia. They moved from New York to Philadelphia due to a strike shutdown of their New York factory. Moving on from that, we can see here that we're still dealing with arch tops around this time. This is 1962. An E212 TN in 1962 with a natural finish. In the fishy 1966 ad above, the company wondered why celebrities didn't endorse Epiphone guitars. Maybe because they were too busy helping to promote Gibsons instead. It's a little bit of I suppose, aggressive marketing. But again, at this point in time, 1962, they were owned by Gibson. So it's really weird that they would kind of do that to themselves at that point in time, at 1966. So yeah, weird. Very strange. Yeah, because according to this, in 1958, Gibson started to manufacture and market its new Epiphone lines alongside of its Gibson lines. So a bit weird that they would kind of, I suppose, dig at themselves as part of this ad. But I suppose it's faux competition that they're creating and geeing up. So, I suppose a more marketing tactic more than anything else. Over here, though, we get some interesting models. And I really like all of these. I believe this one over here, it says it here, this is a Crestwood solid body from 1959, the year after Gibson purchased them. Really weird that the neck just kind of like ends at the body. So is that like a through body, I wonder? It's going to be something that I'll need to take a look at. And we have, again, these old Epiphone style knobs here and this switch here, presumably to move between the humbuck or the pickups that are there. This one in the middle, though, this is a Crestwood Custom from 1964. It kind of reminds me of an Epiphone Melody Maker, I believe they're called. But cool trem system. I like that. I wonder, do those strings go... No, they don't go through the body. They kind of get put in reverse ways around, and then they curl around the trem system. And then we've got this cool looking headstock here as well, which I like. I'd love to see that come back for some of the Epiphone models. Then over here on the right, we have a Sorrento hollow body from 1968. So back to their hollow body roots. Again, we've got that sharp angle and that we were seeing on some of those, that sharp, horn on the under cutaway, the bottom cutaway, that we were seeing on some Gibson models around that time. And again, interestingly, we've got this old-timey bridge that has the dual scale on them, which is interesting. It's kind of neat. On the next page, we have another Crestwood. This is a Crestwood Deluxe. Comes with 3 pickups, and this is an Epiphone Casino. This specifically is Paul McCartney's Epiphone Casino, made in 1962, apparently used on paperback writer. It's interesting that we have this Casino, which again is still a very popular guitar to this day, alongside this Crestwood Deluxe model, which is largely forgotten to this day. The one that I was thinking of was the Coronet rather than the Crestwood. And the Coronet actually only has one pickup in the bridge position, I believe, whereas the Crestwood Deluxe has the 3 and the regular Crestwood has 2. It's a shame that this body type has kind of been forgotten, though it is probably a bit clunky. I kind of love it. Casino actually has an adjustable bridge, which is nice to see. Nice to see those adjustable bridges coming in so that you can actually intonate properly as well. Next up, we have more Epiphones, which is great, in a variety of different bodies. So over here on the left hand side we have the Epiphone Professional, which had 5 tone expressor controls and a special amplifier that could be adjusted from extra controls on the guitar. This did not prove very popular. That is one thing that we are seeing a lot of these days as well, that guitars that require specific or special equipment to run or to use are not popular, right? We're seeing it with what's that high-end brand that you could like hot swap the pickups out of? I can't quite remember what that was called. That has gone bankrupt. They've gone into liquidation. They are no longer a thing. You have like the Line 6 Variax, which was not very popular. We've got any guitars that require an app to use, not popular, because apps will, eventually not be compatible with your devices because they will not be updated and things like that. So people are apprehensive of that, and I think that's with good reason. And I think that's probably what happened here in 1963. And it's mad to think that we're still making those same mistakes, 70 years later. Then we have the Epiphone designed Kaola Custom. Over here, this is one from 1964. In collaboration with studio guitarist Al Kaola. He played the Bonanza theme. Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. If you don't know what the Bonanza theme is, go look it up. It is an absolute classic of Western television from my youth. It is well worth your time. This was a slightly more conventional version of the earlier Professional. And similarly, we have a bunch of these knobs down here, probably similar to the 6-tone controls that we would have seen on that earlier model. On the right over here, we have a Coronet made in 1965. So that's the one that I was referring to earlier, compared to the customs that we were seeing with the multiple pickups. The Coronet just has the one with the Epiphone E in the middle, which I think is kind of cool. I quite like that, and I quite like this color on this as well. But more specifically, I love the headstocks. And one thing that I haven't spoken about too much over the course of this so far is the headstock shapes. These are effectively Gibson headstocks with curved sides, rather than what we know of Epiphone today, which is the curved sides, but also this second kind of chunk taken out of the side, the edges of these headstocks. Whereas this one is very much its own thing over here, which I love. Then we have a 12-string Riviera, from 1968, which is your hollow body, presumably based on a Casino, with 12 strings. And then on the right hand side here from 1973, we got this kind of Strat style, but kind of at an offset, ET270 from 1973. So it was cool to see that they were really trying to get into the same space as Fender around that time. Granted, quite a bit later, with the 2 single coils rather than the 3. A pickup selector switch in an odd position wouldn't be my favorite, but the trem is very different to anything they've done before, because obviously you've got the stop tail, hardtail piece on the Coronet. You have the string through the bridge on basically all these other models, and this is probably string through body for this particular one, again in that same Fender style. Then we get up to an Epiphone Scroll 250 from 1977. Sorry, this one here is the Epiphone Scroll, hence the scroll on the upper horn here, from 1977. Kind of cool, kind of strange, quirky body shape that we have. I kind of like it. Next to a gold finished USA Coronet made at Gibson's Nashville plant in 1990. So despite being an Epiphone, it was made in a Gibson factory with locking tuners, or with locking nut, locking bridge, a Floyd Rose, by the looks of things, or at least that style of bridge, a humbucker in the bridge, and a single coil angled pickup in the neck-ish. These kind of weird looking knobs down here, and a pickup selector switch presumably in the middle. yeah, it's a cool looking guitar, and we've got that Gibson hockey stick, or I suppose maybe reverse hockey stick headstock up there, which makes it look pretty cool. Very ready for, well, I was about to say very ready for the 80s, but that was actually made in 1990. And then this catalogue page in the back highlights American-made Epiphones from that period. The USA Pro, again, got that hockey stick headstock. We've got the humbuckers in the bridge. Presumably these are more active, trying to kind of, I suppose, appeal to a different audience compared to, you know, the cornets and the casinos and the ESs. Then over here we get into what Epiphone are very well known for, the budget Gibsons, right? So we've got this Epiphone Les Paul here on the left. Again, we've got that little notch cut out of the edge of the headstock to further differentiate it from Gibson. We've got the Epiphone Flying V, which still looks pretty cool. Again, we've got that quite wide joint where the neck meets the body. And we've got this other Epiphone Les Paul with the F-holes. This one's from 1999, this is from 1999, and this is from 1998. And this is really where, in my opinion, Epiphone has lost a lot of its identity, and that it's not its own brand at this point in time. It is effectively just a way for Gibson to sell more affordable versions of their popular models, the SGs and the Vs and the Les Pauls. Then over here we have the Epiphone Casino, or the Epiphone Sheraton, sorry, here in the middle. This is the Noel Gallagher version, made in 1997, and this over here is his own specific custom one with the Union Jack logo on the top. That is Epiphone. That is the history of Epiphone. So from, you know, again, up to the late 90s, early 2000s. But yeah, that is how it is. You know, a lot of identity up to early 90s, and then from that point onwards, they're just, you know, a Gibson clone factory. You know, and it's sad. It's something I would like to see. I would like to see more Epiphones, kind of going back to like the coronet style, like this USA produced one. That would be really, really cool. Releasing an Epiphone scroll, that would be great. But I don't see it happening, because I think that you know, Gibson are happy enough for this to be their budget line, and for them to continue to release guitars under that name and that brand, that popularize their regular ones. Maybe this being a stepping stone towards those more popular Gibson labeled guitars that they produce. No longer in Kalamazoo though. No longer in Kalamazoo. But yes, that is Epiphone. A relatively storied history for what many know as a budget brand. But if you like this episode, please do hit the like button, as we mentioned before. Subscribe to the channel to see more of this kind of stuff in the future. And if you want to see any other brands covered in this visual history series, let me know in the comments section, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.